Hi, I'm John O'Brien, founder and MD of LCMB, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Sam Thomas, who is the decarbonisation manager within the property team at Oxfordshire County Council. Hi, Sam.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. So, Oxford County Council are the local authority of Oxfordshire, and they deliver services across the county for over 600,000 residents. And the services include the management and decarbonisation of the real estate, including offices, schools, libraries, and other facilities across the county. And over the last couple of years, LCMB have had and continue to have the pleasure of partnering with Sam and his colleagues to help create decarbonisation strategies for the estate and support the successful public sector decarbonisation grant applications. So, Sam, can you tell us a little bit about your role within Oxfordshire County Council, the challenges for the council, and the goals that led you to reach out to LCMB?
My role is to essentially look at the plans and put in place plans for decarbonising the entire corporate estate. And ultimately make sure all of our heating and building systems are ripped apart and put back together in a way that's compatible with the net zero target. So for a county-wide sort of ambition, the councillors have been very clear that their priority is to make sure that the council meets that net zero by 2030 target for its corporate estate. Approximately a third of that carbon footprint is through our built assets, through our properties. Where we are sort of going, and a lot of the work that LCMB have done has helped inform our process and our thinking around this. But fundamentally, our core objectives is to make sure that we're off fossil fuels. We're not using fossil fuels to heat or any other form of usage in our buildings and transport, but buildings primarily. So what essentially that dictates is the electrification of the heating through heat pumps and infrared heating, and then accompanying that is also the needs for improving a building fabric to make sure that the operating temperatures are compatible, but in turn also electrical efficiency improvements and renewable generation technologies as well, just to offset the increased running costs associated with the heat pumps.
Thank you for that, Sam. So that's a pretty ambitious target, 2030. So I guess LCMB have helped you deliver decarbonisation plans for some of the buildings across your estate and support your public sector decarbonisation scheme grant applications. So I'm keen to find out a little bit more about the primary outcomes that you were hoping to achieve and how the partnership with LCMB's played a role in that.
So I suppose to a degree, we've also got to look at the point in time. So when we started working with LCMB, the council had very limited knowledge in terms of its buildings and the decarbonisation plans going forward. And so one of the key aspects that has really come out of this is the work that LCMB have done to look at the different buildings to help put those heat decarbonisation plans and the more holistic sort of picture for each individual building. That in turn has helped us understand what the estate-wide picture looks like, and also helped us have a look at those buildings and really sort of understand whether or not they're the buildings that we should be operating by 2030 in terms of the cost, the measures that we would need to deploy, and help build that wider program in terms of where we've got to go. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's the net zero by 2030 is the ultimate goal. And got to keep the eye on the prize. So as you said, we've done quite a bit of work in relation to or a large volume of work in quite a short space of time in looking at all of the different buildings and assisting with it was PSDS 3A, PSDS 3B, and a PSDS 3C applications. So one after the other, and it's been a joy to work with Mike and the team.
Oh, thank you for that. The team will be pleased with that feedback. And I know the team have been particularly pleased and enjoyed working with yourself and the team on the projects to create the decarbonisation plans. And I guess my next question is, from your point of view, what do you think were the key highlights of the projects? And did we as a team sort of learn any key lessons that you would take forward?
I think there's been a couple of sort of key highlights, really. The flexibility in terms of the number of site visits. Some of the sites that we've got are very complex and have changing needs. So some of the day centres, as an example, it's not sort of a case of just turning up, and the children's centres as well. You can't just turn up. It's got to be sort of booked in, and eventualities happen that you might have to juggle the situation around. So I think it's been very useful having that flexibility from yourselves and LCMB to be able to sort of accommodate the necessary visits, often with a very short deadline, which is always the case with BSDS. So that's one key highlight. I think from a more technical perspective, another key highlight is certainly the discussions that have taken place in relation to the fire service and some of our fire stations. We typically the way we have operated our fire stations and how it has been before has been to heat the building 37 hours a day, 37 hours a week, sorry, regardless as to whether or not that building is occupied. And actually drilling down into it, those buildings are only occupied 5 to 10 hours per week. And coming without having done that piece of analysis, without having asked those questions, it could be very easy to go in and just replace the gas heating system with an air source heat pump when it may not be the most suitable heating solution. And it turns out, infrared heating is actually a much better fit and solution for the needs of the services and the buildings that are in there. So under PSDS 3A, we've got some infrared heating that's gone into Hook Norton Fire Station, and the information that's coming back is it's a success.
I'm pleased that we're keeping the firefighting teams happy then and warm when it's cold.
Exactly that.
That's good. The return on investment of a project is obviously important, but I'd love to know your thoughts on what, as an organisation, or how, as an organisation, you measure success, whether it's through tangible results such as cost saving, energy saving, or less tangible results connected with your journey to net zero carbon.
I think, to be honest, it's a bit of everything. Being the organisation we've got 4,500 employees across all of our different sites, and everybody sort of sees and experiences benefits in different ways. So purely from a financial perspective, in PSDS 3A, I think you helped us win, I think it was just under $1 million of PSDS funding. Unfortunately, we weren't successful with PSDS 3B, but we've got a bid in relation to PSDS 3C, which is just over $3 million grant funding, pure grant funding, with a similar sort of figure for match funding. So that's the sort of financial picture. And in a statewide, we're sort of anticipating that we're going to be having to spend upwards of 20 million for decarbonising the bits of the estate that we're familiar. We definitely know we're going to be operating by 2030. So that's quite a substantial figure to be working with. There's other benefits that have come. As I said before, we had a limited sort of picture and a strategic approach, and the work that LCMB have done has really helped us build that strategic approach and understand where we need to be and where we need to go. And part of that, I should say, is that alongside electrification of all of our heating and our transport, we can't get the buildings to net zero. It's just not possible. So even by 2030, even if we did get the buildings to a degree by net zero, the electrical components that we're going to use, the carbon factors associated with it, there would still be a carbon output. And so, by 2030, we would need to carbon offset. Some of the work that LCMB have done has highlighted opportunities around deployment of small-scale solar farms, which at the moment, the business cases don't necessarily stack up on their own in terms of exporting to the grid. But when we take into that picture what that cost would be by 2030, it's really useful to have that contingency in our back pocket should we need it going forward to meet that net zero target. So there's quite a few different strategic aspects to it, alongside identifying a number of our sites which are already underheated or underperforming that we can take action towards as well.
So I guess from your answer, it's clear, decarbonising an organisation and its built assets is complex. So would you have any advice for an organisation or business looking to achieve similar goals in terms of a journey to net zero carbon, or its transition to a lower carbon future, what they should really think about or consider when setting off on that journey?
The key piece of advice I've got is keep the eye on the 2030 target and fully understand, how you've got to get there. It's not a sprint. It's it's not a race, but you've got to make sure that you're going to get to where you need to be. And so building that strategic picture and reiterating it and go over those processes to make sure that you've got everything in place would be my advice.
I think it's fair to say that the projects we've collaborated on have delivered some tangible benefits for Oxfordshire County Council, have been a success. So from your point of view, what would you say is the biggest value that you've been able to take from working with the LCMB on the projects to date?
I think certainly, there's so many different values that we could talk about, but the biggest value from a financial perspective is actually just helping us get going. From my perspective, when I came into the role, when we really started work on the county council's buildings, we weren't at an advanced stage, and so the speed at which we needed to move and we needed to start progressing this, because 2030 really isn't that far away. Without LCMB being able to do that legwork and provide that expertise, we would be very, very far behind where we are now, essentially. So I think that's certainly the biggest benefit that LCMB had provided.
So Sam, thank you for that, and thank you for sparing your time to speak to me today. I'd like to wish you and your colleagues at Oxfordshire County Council the best of luck in the journey to net zero carbon and your ambitious target of 2030. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan.